Well, good morning.
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 Everybody looks so lively this morning. Wake everybody up. It is time for us to begin. We will begin with lesson number 4, which is some things abominable to the Lord. Let's begin by going to God in prayer. Our wise, merciful, loving Heavenly Father, we're so thankful for everything that you've done for us. We're so thankful for our life and our health and many blessings that we have. And we pray that as we enter into this period of study this morning, that we focus on your word and what you would have us to learn from it. We pray that what we do take away, we apply it to our lives. We always strive to please you in everything that we do. Pray this in your Son's name. Amen. Some things abominable to the Lord. What does abomination mean?
Detestable.
Detestable? Okay.
Abhorrent.
Abhorrent? Okay.
Thesaurus.
Loathsome.
Loathsome? Okay.
Sickening.
Sickening? Okay, those are all words found in Strong's.
I said something deeply hated.
Okay, deeply hated. Okay. It depends where it's used, what it means. As I do my studies for the class, one of the things I like to do is I like to go to YouTube and just watch some videos of what other people say, different things mean, their takes, whether it's a member of the church or somebody else. And I was watching this video, and apparently the guy doing the video on abominations was speaking about homosexuality and using a definition of abomination to say that it's simply referring to something that was wrong for Israel to do. But it was okay for other pagan nations, and therefore it was just a specific instance. So I think that's why it's so important for us to understand how words are used and where words are used in the Bible, so that we know exactly what they mean. Leviticus 11:11 says, "They shall be even an abomination unto you. Ye shall not eat of their flesh, but ye shall have their carcasses in abomination." That's talking about idolatrous objects. It's things that are detestable because it's idolatrous. Then you look at Leviticus 7:18, "And if any of the flesh of the sacrifice of his peace offering be eaten at all on the third day, it shall not be acceptable. It shall be an abomination. It shall be a foul thing. It shall be refuse." That's not pleasant. But that's a little bit different than the first definition. And it's different than the last one. We see in Leviticus 18:22, "Thou shalt not lie with mankind as with womankind. It is abomination." And that's what we've heard of the different definitions this morning. It's a disgusting thing. It's morally disgusting, and it's immorally and it's unclean. And this is the definition that we see in every instance in Proverbs. Is this a disgusting thing, something that is detestable to God? So when we talk about abomination, you may hear people, if you have discussions, especially on things like homosexuality, you may see things like this, but it's important for us to know exactly what it means. There's 8 uses of abomination throughout the Bible, 5 in the Old Testament and 3 in the New Testament. But as I said, every instance we see the same word in Proverbs. Something that is disgusting, something that's loathsome to God. But with this definition in mind, I'd like to read what Proverbs has to say about things being an abomination to the Lord. Did anybody happen to look up how many times abomination is used in Proverbs? It's used over 20 times in the book. And what I was initially going to do is I was initially going to go through and just with a list and just read every single one of them, which wouldn't take very long. But as I began to look at each one of them, I saw that there really wasn't much of a purpose because it's covered in the 7 things that we're going to read about this morning. I thought that was pretty interesting. I went each one, and I'm like, well, that could be under this category. No, that one's under this category. So I would have ended up wasting some time. Aren't you all lucky? We still probably won't get through the lesson, but anyways, that's okay. So let's read it in chapter 6, Proverbs chapter 6, starting in verse 16. It says, there are 6 things that the Lord hates, 7 that are an abomination to him: haughty eyes, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that make haste to run to evil, a false witness who breathes out lies, and one who sows discord among brethren. We're going to spend most of the class, if not all of class, just speaking of these, as I said, because the other ones that are listed in the book, I believe, fall under these categories. If you disagree that the other ones fall under the categories, you'd be wrong, but we could discuss it if you like. I'd like to start by looking at the 6 things the Lord hates. 7 are an abomination. What does that mean? Is it 6 things God hates and that 7th one is an abomination? Does it mean there are 6 things God hates? No, 7 are an abomination. All 7. What's that mean?
Maybe that's just like a poetic exclamation, it's sort of a thing, you know, these things I hate, you know, these things, you know, just sort of it's not meant to be literal 6 or 6 literal with 7, like, but the way to put it to underline the fact that it's a hateful thing.
Okay.
All of them have the same punishment, so they all wind, to me, they all wind up it's the same bunch.
Okay.
I'm not real sure that the use of 7 there, because he lists 7 things. I'm not sure that where it says 6 and then 7, that's actually referring numerically. I think it's just an attention getter.
Okay.
I think, you know, there's 6 things, but there's 7 that he, you know, kind of, because he lists 7.
Right.
And like you said, they're all of equal disdain and dislike from him. So I think it's an attention getter.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else? I thought it was interesting that there's a lot of differences among commentators about this. And some say it's, you know, God hates these 6 things. But the last one is what is the abomination to him. And we can see that, you know, somebody who sows discord among brethren, how much of an abomination that would be to God, because that's his people. But at the same time, we see this, I didn't write down, I think it's in Job, we see the same kind of language, 6 things the Lord hates, 7, is, I believe, kind of what Daphne and Lynn said, it's more of an attention getting. 6 things, no 7. That's just drawing your attention to just how important it is. Tricia?
Oh, no, that's okay. I'm probably wrong anyway. I was just wondering if there were any of the commentaries that suggested that the first part of that was referring to above, because when you wink with his eyes, you know, all those things, those are 6 things, and so I didn't know if it could be a continuation of what was above, and then below is the listing of the 7 that are an abomination. I don't know. But
Well, that's interesting. I hadn't seen any commentaries that say that, but that's...
probably wrong. It just came to me while we were
It could possibly be. I didn't look at the ones above it, you know, and I didn't realize there were 6 above it. So it's possible. Yeah.
Phrases like this, you object to another thing.
And Amos does this with the neighbor. He said, for 3 transgressions of the master, yes, even for 4, will not revoke his punishment. Then you go to Gaza, Philistine, Tyre, Edom, Ammon, all these other nations. It emphasizes or re-emphasizes.
Right.
Hyperbolize.
Yeah. And I remember there were like 2 or 3 different areas in the Bible that mentioned like 3, no 4, and then I think 2 places where 6, no 7. So I think it's attention, putting emphasis on it. What's interesting about the number that he uses? What's that?
7 of perfection or
Yeah,
something.
7, it's a completeness, it's a wholeness. So it's kind of the whole of what is an abomination to the Lord. Yeah, I think you'd be hard pressed to find exclusions to things that are abomination to God outside of this list here. Anybody have anything else on that before we move on? All right. Let's go to the first one, a proud look. What does that mean?
Pridefulness.
Okay, pridefulness. It's not looking at somebody and, hey, I'm so proud of you. No.
It stems from a selfishness because it's all about me and arrogance kind of.
Okay.
Ego thing.
Ego. Okay. Some versions say haughty eyes. It's eyes of loftiness. Thayer says swollen estimate of one's own power or merit. Now, what are some areas in your life where you struggle with this? I'll say for myself, I've been a Christian a long time. If I come across somebody who hadn't been a Christian for as long, and they have a thought about a meaning of something, well, I've been a Christian for a long time, I think I know better. But do I? Is that attitude just something of a closed off attitude that I'm not willing to accept things that come from other people?
Are you talking about someone that always wants something better than they have? Always looking to a better house, a better car, a better job, or a better, and never contempt or with what they've been blessed with?
I think if it comes from a place of you feel that you deserve it, kind of the jealousy of I deserve it more than they do, that's a sense of pride that one would have. If it's just, I wish I had better stuff, I wish I had a bigger house, I don't necessarily think that's as pride as much as it would be, I deserve a better house. Because we deserve whatever God gives us, right?
Yeah, I've always kind of tagged this haughty eyes together with jealous eyes. And I'm probably wrong on that, but that's just how it's always come across to me. I think that's kind of where Lynn was feeling out a little bit, was because when I see that Thayer's definition, that swollen estimate of one's own power or merits, looking at that other people's situations of where maybe they're not where I'm at or they're ahead, and me being jealous of where they're at, or vice versa.
Okay, yeah.
Well, when I read the book, read this, I was thinking more of like, for myself, when I start talking about our institutional brethren or, other people that aren't Church of Christ, and thinking, okay, well, they just don't get it yet, or they're not in the same place, and I don't think that runs a real risk of being very judgy and being very, oh, well, I'm better than, and I think that's what this is talking about.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's like straight up arrogance. I'm all that and a bag of chips, and you are less than.
Can we do that
So,
again?
God. I am. So, and I think that, actions stem from that viewpoint. You see a lot of people who are like, well, I am worth more because I am a Christian, because I am this, because I am that, because I am, whatever it is you are that you bank your identity on, makes you feel like you are superior in some way to everyone else. And that leads to a whole host of sinful actions when you start thinking of yourself as above everybody for whatever reason.
Do you think that runs into entitlement?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well, it depends, because I think this is something that comes from an individual heart. I am worth more. Not that I have less obstacles, not that I have more stuff, it's not any of that, because you can have all of that and use your powers for good, as it were,
Right.
and share and do this kind of thing. These are people who feel like they are entitled, and they come in all shapes and sizes.
Right. We see
that
that
they feel
in
like
everything.
they are worth more, that they are intrinsically worth more than other people. You
Right.
know, you want to take the low-hanging fruit, let's talk about the Nazis and the Jews. We are worth more than the Jews, so we have a right to do blah, 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 blah. So, take eugenesis. I am worth more because I am a whole human being, so I can certainly get rid of the elderly, the disabled, the unborn, the this or that or the other, because it holds back society. These kinds of things come out of this sort of attitude.
Right, and we
I'm
see
worth
this on an
more.
individual basis.
That's right.
We see, I've got more money than you. Well, I don't. But, so I'm worth more. I've got a better education than you do, so listen to me. I don't have a better education. I'm wiser than you. No, I'm not wiser, but somebody may say that, obviously. But we see this in our everyday life. That may be something that we struggle with. I know it's something that I struggle with, making sure that my pride is in check.
There's a movie out several years ago called The Devil's Advocate, and it was the story of a man's fight with Satan. And at the end, the man wins. And as he comes out of this courtroom where he has won, Satan is standing there and he tells him, you just did a really good job. Good for you. You just stood up and you did this and that and the other. And the guy kind of walks away with a smile on his face, and the devil just smiles and says, pride, this is my favorite thing. I can work with that.
Yeah.
So
That's true. I think that's the downfall of every person. I said last week that I believe that is the root of every single sin that we commit,
Yep.
is pride. I deserve to do this because whatever.
I think that is where a lot of the aversion to authority these days comes into play.
Yeah.
Because people have so much pride in themselves that they don't think that they have to, submit to any sort of authority. And, we see it in the kids in the classroom. They don't have to listen to, to the teacher or the principal or whatever. And, on up the chain. And I think that this is where that stems, because they think that they're better than the authority. And I say they, we all do it to some extent, but, and I think that's where that aversion to authority that is so prominent today comes from.
I think so too. I think so. We see that all over, like you said. Whether it's in school, whether it's at work. He's not my boss. Well, yeah, he is your boss. We can't tell me what to do. Yeah, he's your boss. He can tell you what to do. We see that all over. See that with the Pharisee and tax collector. What was that about?
Being thankful.
I'm better than you.
Yeah, a Pharisee. What was he doing?
Look at me.
perfect law keeping.
Yeah, it's, hey, look at all these things I've done. I've kept your law. I've done this. I've done that. Hey, you make sure I speak out loud so everybody can hear what all I've done. And God, thank you for not making me like that poor, pathetic person over there. What did that tax collector do? He wouldn't even look up to the heavens. He lowered his head. He beat his chest as a sign of being not worthy, almost asceticism. He would beat his chest and say, Help me, I'm a sinner. Two totally opposite ends of the spectrum. Which side do we fall on? How do we fit into this category of a proud look? Doesn't matter how much power you have zero power except what is given to you by God. No matter how much wealth you have no wealth except what is given to you by God. No matter how long you've lived your life, no matter how long you've been a Christian, you're only given that time because God gives it to you. To remind each of us how important humility and love should be, how much we should have for each other. I may be strong in an area that my brother is stumbling, in an area that my brother is struggling in. It's not for me to say, I can't believe he has a hard time with that. Why? Because I'm struggling in an area that he's not struggling in. It's that sense of pride. We need to have humility to know that I don't care what area he's struggling in, I'm going to help him because I'm strong and I can. Instead of saying, I can't believe that. Mindy?
Well, I think it's hard. I think you're right, but I think it's hard when we look at, if you think, okay, well, all of these things, God has given it to me. It's really easy to jump to why God gave it to me is because I'm so awesome and I'm so special, and He didn't give it to somebody else because they're not. It's real, I think it's very easy to see someone in a very different situation and think, oh, well, they're there because they've just made horrible choices and I made great choices, or, what have you. And that may not be the situation at all, but even when we acknowledge that God's the source of it all, we think, well, we got it because we're special.
Right. What do we think whenever we see somebody on the side of the road asking for money?
Get a job.
Yeah, get a job. Oh, I wonder what drugs or how much alcohol they were drinking to end up on the streets. That's not always the case, is it? You have mental issues that people go through. You have PTSD that people struggle with on a daily basis that may keep them from having a job. There are so many things that could cause somebody to not be able to keep a job or not be able to get a job. And if our first thing is, well, what kind of poor choices did they make in life to end up here? Is that a humble heart? Is that proud? I'm better than them. I've got a job and I can take care of myself. Where does that come from? Does it come from pride or does it come from humility? Let's look at Ephesians chapter 4. They said, walk in a manner worthy of the calling to which you have been called, with what? All humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another in love, eager to maintain the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. Can that be done if you're proud? Can that be done if you're looking down your nose at people? If you have those haughty eyes, that loftiness, that swollen sense of self-worth? You can't do that. You don't have humility. You don't have gentleness. You don't have patience. We can see why that is an abomination to the Lord. Anybody have anything else before we move on to the next one? Which is a lying tongue. What do lying lips indicate?
Heart is not right.
Okay. Heart that's not right. There, put it up there. Matthew 15:18. What comes out of the mouth proceeds from the heart. That defiles a person. What we say shows what is in our heart. If I see that guy on the side of the road and I say, man, he must have really messed up, that shows what is in my heart. That shows my character. That shows who I am.
I was going to say, so it's interesting, the lying tongue in our translation here, in the Hebrew, it's a tongue of deception. It's that we're telling ourselves one thing, we're telling people one thing, and yet the complete opposite is the case.
Yeah. And I think of, was it Walter Scott, who said, oh, what a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive. It's that whole deception. As we lie, what happens? You get drawn in more and more Talked about that little white lie. There's no little white lie because it just snowballs into a huge lie. So what would your definition of lying be?
Death.
Death?
Yes.
Okay.
Not the truth.
Not the truth. My simple definition is willful misstatement of fact. You know what's right and you say something that's not right. We're not going to really go much into a lying tongue because I think Brian did a pretty good job of that the other day. But are you excused from being considered a liar if you say something, then you're told the facts, and you ignore what the facts are, and you still say what you want to say? That's a lie, isn't it? And the reason I bring that up is we don't see that in politics today, do we? We don't see that in discussions and debates on politics. Well, Trump said this, or Biden said that. Well, no, that's not what he said, or that's not what she said. Prove it. Okay, well, here's proof. I don't care what that says. That's fake news or whatever. That doesn't give us an excuse. Stating things that we know are not true is a lie. And what do we know that God thinks of that? It's an abomination. A simple white lie is an abomination? Well, that's what it says, doesn't it?
You know, that's interesting that you talk about fake news. But I was thinking about what the Founding Fathers had in mind when they ordained a free press, or when they said that the press could be above certain restrictions and stuff. It was based on the idea that they were going to be unbiased and tell the truth. And what happens when you start to lie, when you start to be biased? Not outright lying even, just swaying things, spinning, we use the word spin or whatever. What happens is that soon you've gotten so far afield and people are so recognizing of the fact that you're deceptive that even if it was important, they'll never believe a thing you say. It's
Right.
like the Jeffrey Epstein did not kill himself joke that you see going around everywhere. Nobody believes that, no matter, even if the news people or whoever are telling you that. And it's because you have this habit of being deceptive, maybe not even outright lying, but being deceptive for your own gain, whether it's monetary or whatever. And so now, even if it's really important that somebody believe you, they will not.
Right.
And that's the trap of lying. You know, you get to the point where it's like the little boy who cried wolf, you know. You tell so many lies that people stop believing anything you say. And when it's really important that they believe you, they won't.
Right. And, and I use that, the whole example, the political speech and things like that and all that debating. That comes down to me as a person. I know a thing or two about lying. I know when somebody asks me a question, I know how to work that in my head to where I don't want to admit that. So I'm just going to direct my answer in this direction. I am lying. I'm not stating what the truth is. And maybe we find ourselves all in that position from time to time, but we see how serious it is. How serious is it? It's right next to hands that shed innocent blood. How do we know God's feelings about shedding innocent blood?
Shall not kill.
Thou shalt not kill. That's a decent one to go to. And that's one that often gets misused. Thou shalt not kill. That means we shouldn't have capital punishment. That means we shouldn't ever participate in war. No, that's not what that's saying. That comes back to the idea of shedding innocent blood. Thou shalt not shed innocent blood. Cain and Abel's a good one. How do we know God didn't like that? He punished Cain. It was a pretty good punishment where he had to wander the earth and he feared for his life. She gave him Bathsheba, Uriah. How do we know that God didn't care for that? Maybe died. He wasn't able to build the temple because he had blood on his hands.
The sword never left his house.
His sword never left his house. Genesis 9:6, whoever sheds man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed. This is abominable to the Lord. I think everybody's in agreement with that. Shedding innocent blood is horrible. It's something that we should not participate in. It's something that's an abomination to God. But what examples of shedding innocent blood kind of get swept under the rug in today's society? Abortion's one of them. The book mentions another one, euthanasia. You know, suicide is another one. Do people consider abortion to be okay? We see that all over. Do people consider euthanasia? We are just helping the person to not be in pain. That is awful for somebody to have to live the rest of their life in pain, isn't it? I can't imagine. I can't imagine a mother who has a child that's getting ready to be born, and you feel hopeless and you feel helpless because of the way maybe the child was conceived. It's awful. But is it innocent? Are we shedding innocent blood?
What do you think about the opioid manufacturers?
I don't like them.
But I mean, do you think that falls under this category? I mean, it's easy for me to say, okay, well, this is like terrorists. That's what this is doing. You know, people that don't discriminate about the actions of their consequences that way.
Now, that's a good question. I hadn't thought about that, but maybe it falls in line with a doctor who performs abortion. You know, because a doctor is shedding innocent blood. Somebody who's manufacturing something for the sole well, that'd be something I'd have to consider and think about. You know, the extent of it, because you could look at alcohol,
Or tobacco.
you know, tobacco, things like that. Possible.
Paint thinner.
Super glue.
Yeah, it's hard, it depends on, when it comes to something like opioids,
Mm-hmm.
they have a beneficial use and they have a detrimental use. And so the person who manufactures it, if they are making a medicine to help and somebody else uses it in another way, then I don't think that they could be held responsible for making this thing.
Right.
So it would depend, there's so many things that depends on. This is a problem that we get to when we start trying to group everybody together in a group and make a judgment about that group.
Right.
So many things are from the individual's heart that you just can't do that. So you've got a guy who makes a drug, say for example, he makes a drug, but he knows that it's going to kill 90% of the people who take it, and he doesn't say anything about it. Okay, that falls under shedding innocent blood. You have a guy who makes a drug that has some side effects, but he makes those perfectly clear. This is what it does that's good, this is what can happen if you overuse it, or if you do this or that or the other. That's a completely different case all,
Right.
but you still got a guy making the same pill.
Right.
So, and it doesn't take into account the ones that make them in their garage and sell them on the street. That's
Right.
a different thing too. So, but it's the same substance.
Yeah.
Anything can kill somebody
Right.
and be abused. You talk about getting rid of the Second Amendment, you get rid of the gun amendment, and take that away from you because people kill them. They say the gun manufacturers are responsible for murder. Well, the farmer says, they're guilty of murder, using the drug? No. Anything can be abused what we need to always do when we face more issues is to reflect upon what is God saying about human nature, about man's nature.
And I do want to say, I'll get to you in just a second. I do want to say, the point of this is not for me to be able to look out and say, that guy's a shedder of innocent blood. This person has a lying tongue. This person sows discord among the brethren. This is for me to say, do I take part in shedding innocent blood? Do I have a lying tongue? Do I sow discord? This is an introspection on how Solomon is telling me how I need to live my life in the best way possible. This isn't for us to be able to label people as, this person fits into that category, this person fits into that category. Because it's easy whenever I do that to have proud eyes, have that haughty look of looking down on people and saying, well, you fall into that category. I need to work on what category I fall into.
So I'm completely with you on that, and I'm with Daphne on it's got to be in the heart. But I think when we go to the examples that are in the book and they say, ooh, abortion, check, ooh, euthanasia, check, I think there's more that goes into this. And the example that I was thinking about was specifically related to this Purdue Pharma case where they're talking about promoting opioid use for everything.
Right.
And it was really getting a lot of people hooked on a product that then just went way off the rails, and the whole point of it was for profit. It wasn't about it, and I'm with you, Terry, on that. You can't say the gun manufacturers are responsible for gun murders. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that if you've got to think about what are the downstream consequences of if your profit motivation, then your heart's not in the right place, and that's going down to this shedding innocent blood. And that's
And
I
at the
just
same
think that
time,
there's
you're
a bigger thing
downplaying
here.
the potential
Right.
drawbacks of what this drug is.
Right.
Don't worry about that. No, that's fine. Do just write that script.
And that's where each one of us come in and say, no matter what I'm doing, what is my purpose for doing what I'm doing in my life? Is it to benefit God? And I think if that is our first priority, what am I doing to benefit God? None of these things are going to be an issue for us, are they? But they are. Hopefully not shedding innocent blood. Hopefully we're not falling into that category. If you are, let me know and I will stay away.
Well, I just think we have to think about our decisions. I mean, we're talking about, like the issue of politics you mentioned a minute ago. Immigration's a huge issue. If we are not participating in helping those who are in unfortunate circumstances, and I'm not saying they should be allowed to immigrate or not, I'm just saying we have to be helpful to those people, and we are not helpful, and then they get killed, then that comes back on, hey, you should have done something. You should stand up and do something. I feel like that's part of this. We have to be active participants.
Okay, and I think along those lines, that's where disagreement comes on what needs to be done, how much we should do, what qualifies as enough before somebody has to take the responsibility on themselves to not put themselves in positions to which they may be killed, they may be seriously injured, things like that. We have a responsibility, as we see throughout the Bible, to take care of those who are less fortunate. That is an individual responsibility that we each bear. And that falls on each one of us to look at ourselves and say, how much am I doing in that regard? Brian?
All of this really comes back down to intent. And that was something we talked about on Wednesday night in the lying classes. The definition, every definition that comes up with lying has the word intent in it. And when you look through all of these 7 things that are here, they're all things about intention. I am intending to lie. I'm intending to have these haughty eyes. I'm intending to shed innocent blood. And you can go through and see, in fact, Deuteronomy 19 gives credences or examples of manslaughter, where it's an accident. That's not considered innocent. Shedding innocent blood was an accident. It wasn't something that could be dealt very harshly with. But if it was intentional, the elders of the city were to find that man and then execute it, pretty much is how it was to be worked around. And all of this that we're talking about comes back to intent. If it was my intent to cause harm to any person anywhere like this, that's the big part of sin.
Okay. And we're going to go ahead and move on because, surprise, we're not even close. Heart that devises wicked plans. What's meant by this? Basically, people who plan on committing evil deeds. We see in Proverbs chapter 1 a perfect example of this. Proverbs chapter 1, starting in verse 11. If they say, "Come with us, let us lie in wait for blood, let us ambush the innocent without reason. Like Sheol, let us swallow them alive and whole, like those who go down to the pit. We shall find all precious goods and shall fill our houses with plunder." This is the whole idea of devising wicked plans. Let's plan on doing evil. Let's sit there and see, okay, what can I do, in that regard, Lynn?
Yeah, and I think the next part of verse 18, it goes with that. A heart that devises it and then a feet that carries that plan out.
Right.
It's all the same thing.
Exactly. It's just a continuation. It's one thing if I'm devising a way to do wicked things, to do evil things, but then I don't follow through. Is that possible? Yeah. Hopefully, if we find ourselves starting to do this, we will wise up and not follow through. But that's a continuation of it. We look at some examples of this: robbery, premeditated murder, being in an adulterous relationship, committing fraud. Lying can be, just a few of them. The list can go on and on. Go ahead.
Was this the same thing that Jesus was talking about? If you do it in your heart, then you've done it in person.
Okay, yeah, that's a planning. We're not talking about getting a piece of paper out and writing down all the steps and things like that. But it's a planning in your heart.
It's still evil intent.
Right.
Right.
If you look at somebody with adulterous eyes, then
You've done it.
you're already.
Right. And it's that process of planning things out. I think it's one thing to look at somebody with lust, but it's another thing to think about and plan out in your mind activities and things like that.
But also because you don't carry those out, it doesn't let you off the hook.
Right. Right.
The second part of verse 18, if you're not guilty of those feet that carried it out, it still doesn't let you off the hook.
Exactly. Time spent planning wicked things could certainly be better spent planning work for the kingdom, studying the Bible, getting to know brothers and sisters. Wicked scheming is an abomination. Stay away from it. That can include gossip. Then just run through this. Feet that are swift to running to mischief. What's wrong with swift feet? There's nothing wrong with swift feet as long as you're running in the right direction. Everything. If you're going in the wrong direction, there's everything wrong with it. And I did this at 1 o'clock in the morning, so it's even worse if you're part of one direction.
Bad. Backstreet Boys are not happy with you either right now, Joe.
Well, that's okay. Just got the right stuff.
That's because of the block.
Okay, I don't know. What ways can easily flowing towards mischief show in our lives? Where was that at? Going out for drinks after work. You want to come? Sure. Next thing I know, without hesitation, I'm 6 beers in and you're lit up. Do we hesitate or do we just run towards it? Do we run towards sin without thinking about it? Someone tells you something immediately, I can't wait to tell so-and-so. Gossip. Do we immediately run in that direction? Someone cuts you off without hesitation. You say something or you do something. That's swift feet running towards mischief. Why do we find our feet running that way? It comes down to training. Do we train ourselves in the direction our feet need to walk? And a false witness, what's so bad about false witnesses?
That's justice.
Okay. First, they're liars. Second, it perverts justice. And don't sow discord among brethren. Behold how good and how pleasant it is for a brother to dwell in unity together with God. It's important. Don't sow discord. Thank you.